Before we get started, just a quick note, spoiler alert.
And we are adults, and I will try very hard not to use adult language, but this is the warning.
Welcome back to The Last Library on the Left. My name is Jennifer.
And my name is Sadina. We're a horror review and discussion podcast where we talk about horror in books, movies, and other formats, why we seek it out, and why we need it in our lives.
Today is part 2 of our 2-part series on HBO's Lovecraft Country. If you'd like to listen to the full cast and credits alongside our personal statements, please tune into episode 5, which is part 1.
We cover episodes 1 through 5 in part 1. So we are going to cover episodes 6 through 10.
So let's just dive right into it, huh? Episode 6.
Sounds good. Okay, the historical recap of episode 6 is a little light. It's very specific in that it's a lot of female autonomy represented through Gia. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of military propaganda. It's based during the Korean War, or the Forgotten War, which I thought about later. Ironically, I had forgotten that the Korean War was considered the Forgotten War because it happened between World War II and Vietnam, and Vietnam was so polarizing.
Right.
But it made me think about how much erasure there is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Of Gia's, specifically her personality, her femininity, her autonomy, everything. And also, of course, the erasure of Black people on the front line and their presence in the war. So I find it, I mean, I know in the timeline of the series, the Korean War works best, but I just found it interesting that the Korean War was the one that Tick served in, and it was called the Forgotten War. We also have got a couple of things that I'll touch on when we actually get into the series about the erasure of female autonomy, victim blaming, and just the complexities of the Asian gender dynamic, which I can't speak to personally. I've read a lot of manga, I've watched a lot of anime, I've read a lot about this discrepancy, so I was able to apply that critical thinking to watching this episode. I felt that there were a couple of interesting quotes in this episode that fit with the theme of the Forgotten War and erasure. Gia is speaking to her friend, and she says, "We have to stop letting their fear shape us." She literally could have been talking about anything in her life at that time.
And it's topical even today, her quote, right?
Right. And then the other one that kind of made me sick to my stomach was when the American soldiers were coming through on tanks down a residential area.
Yeah.
And they're handing out propaganda flyers, and their whole shtick is, "America is here to fight for your freedom. Do not be alarmed. There is nothing to fear." And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, G.I. Joe. Okay.
Yeah, okay, G.I. Joe. Oh, you did good with the G.I. Joe.
It just was, I don't know. I was not a fan of that. It made me feel very uncomfortable, and it made me feel very sick to my stomach. Speaking as someone who comes from a very military family, it still does not sit well with me.
That was a really uncomfortable scene.
It really was. Because they're coming out of their homes, out of their hospitals, just going about their daily lives, and a frickin' tank. I mean, put yourself in that position.
A tank.
You know, a tank coming down your neighborhood road and then telling you not to be afraid of this occupation.
I'm uncomfortable when a Hummer goes down the road, okay?
Girl.
Just saying.
Oh my god, unmarked helicopters?
Yes!
So, yeah, I thought that was a lot of historical concepts. I feel like I'm doing a disservice to episode 6, though, and I know I've got to be missing so much. And some of the other issues I want to talk about are kind of contextual to the episode itself.
Yeah. So, in episode 6, this is where we finally get to meet Gia. We've gotten hints of her through conversations she's had with Tick throughout episodes 1 through 5. And he's scared of her for a reason, and so you're kind of like, finally we get this episode from her, so let's see what it's all about.
I thought it was weird though that in all of his fear of her, the projections he had were of her in commando outfit.
Oh yeah,
she was not a commando.
No, she wasn't. She was a nurse.
Right. I thought that was interesting insight into Tick's
psyche.
Yeah, his psyche. Because it was actually around this point where you begin to realize that all the women are the real heroes of the show, and that Tick is a plot device. And you really see that come to a head here, where everything you thought about this character is now turned on its head to where she's a freaking hero too.
I know, man. She's cool. So she was a nurse, and I'm just gonna go right into the supernatural stuff because that was the most interesting to me. Gia's possessed by a Kumiho.
Yeah.
And that's actually at the request of her mother. It's as a form of protection against her, was it stepdad or her father?
Stepfather.
Who I think raped her.
Yeah. And I think not just once, it made it sound like the second sexual abuse had been happening for a while, and the mom found out at some point.
Yeah. And so the Kumiho, I think, is a parallel to a succubus.
Well, it's like a weird mesh between a succubus and it's the Nine Tails.
Yeah. Listen, when they said the Nine Tails, I was thinking Pokemon Go. And so my brain went somewhere completely different.
The Kitsune. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what, the Kitsune. So Gia has possessed by a Kumiho, and she has to, as payment, collect 100. Was it specifically male souls?
Yes, because the Kumiho took the stepfather, killed him to protect Gia, but in payment for the Kumiho to leave Gia and no longer possess her, she had to feed it 100 male souls.
Okay, that was the one question I had. I couldn't remember if it was gender specific, but obviously it was.
That's a fair question.
I mean, yeah.
Also, because later, her nurse friend Young Ja, the way that Young Ja interacted with her, I was like, man, Young Ja's totally into Gia.
I really thought there was a relationship there. I was like, well, maybe it's not gender specific, and maybe she's choosing male souls because she wants to protect her friend, who she may like. So she has to collect these male souls, and it's kind of sad because Gia's also a hopeless romantic, and she watches Judy Garland films. Oh, you kind of feel sad for her. So in the episode, she's a nurse. She's also a Kumio, and at one point, Tick and his friends, his army friends, they come and
his unit.
Yes, thank you. Listen, guys, I'm kind of dumb. I'm just gonna let you. Words escape me for.
You're not dumb.
I can give you all the pop culture references a day.
That's true. You shocked the Academy with those. That's for sure.
So, but some of these things, I don't know. Anyways, back to the story. So the unit come and they suspect a spy amongst the nurses.
Specifically a communist spy.
Yeah. And I tried to block this out because I was really just upset at the whole scene. So I don't remember how they came to accuse Gia's friend.
They were just going down the line. That was the most upsetting part about it. They had the nurses lined up in the position to have the very classic military bullet to the back of the head. If you've ever seen pictures of the Holocaust, the Jews lined up along the pit to be shot and kicked into the pit.
That's what it took me back to. And
yes.
It was really hard to watch. And listen, I watch a lot of horror movies looking through my fingers. And that one, I didn't even look at the screen a lot because it really took me back there.
Well, it was very cold and calculated too.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, Tick kind of scared me in that episode.
He scared me a lot.
Well, in that scene.
Right, in that scene. Because you've seen this sort of, I want to say almost compassionate side of him. And then you see him in the war and you're like, excuse me, sir.
Well, in the whole following orders thing.
Yeah.
That personally upsets me. I hear that a lot from people who do bad things and justify it under, well, I was just following orders.
Yeah.
I have family that chose not to listen to their CO because their CO gave bad orders. And yes, they had repercussions, they got into trouble. On some level, you get that the military has this mindset about following orders, but there's a right and a wrong.
This episode really, it disturbed me a lot. Listen, I'm very vocal about men doing really disgusting things to women. This one was really personal for me, watching the way they did these women, because that's wrong.
Well, and there was a lot of mistreatment of Asian females during these wars.
Yeah.
And they even address it at some point in this episode, comfort women. Makes it sound like they were participating prostitutes. The comfort women, it's presented to you that they are prostitutes hired to help the occupying soldiers release their pent-up frustration so they won't rape women, because that's okay. But not all comfort women were willing.
Yeah.
So to have this line of nurses.
Yeah.
And they just lined them up and callously asked them, are you a communist? And then without negotiation, I don't know, it was so cold, and they shot them, and that's how they got to confronting Gia's friend, Youngja, who was a communist. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, she was so... During the wars, they had such a vilified view of communism. Mm-hmm. And fair. Russia definitely made a bad name for it.
Yeah.
But Youngja was so optimistic and so hopeful for the future. Mm-hmm. In all honesty, she wouldn't have been happy with where North Korea is. Because she was so excited to share that message of shared community with Gia. And Gia was so afraid for her.
I know. That whole scene was really disturbing. So they eventually take Gia's friend away, and presumably she's dead. And so Gia obviously is not having good feelings towards Tick, but Tick becomes injured, and as a nurse, she has to take care of him, takes care of him the way she should be taking care of him. And eventually they bond and they form this friendship.
They bond over the cutest thing, over the Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
And that She had never read it,
Yeah.
but he was reading the book in bed, and they had a discussion about the ending, and she had gotten the ending wrong because she'd only seen the movie.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just like such a endearing little scene because he didn't ridicule her for it. I think that actually is what first attracted him to her.
Yeah.
Was that it was like this really sweet, I don't know, their relationship was really complex.
It was really complex.
You know what I just realized? It mirrors Ruby and Christina really well.
It does. Yeah.
You know, this kind of like complex issue. Also power and dynamics because he was a military soldier.
Opposite
she was a nurse.
ends of side. Yeah.
And it was sort of like one that you wanted to work out, even though they both had motives to sort of, well, Tick didn't really have a motive to use her per se.
Right, because he still maintains that he was just following orders.
Right. But Gia was out for vengeance.
Yeah.
That was one of the souls that she was going to take.
Yeah.
And I think he was the 100th soul.
Yes, he was going to be the 100th soul.
That was going to set her free of the Kumiho, and she was going to be able to reclaim her humanity.
Yeah.
Because one thing that kind of drove me crazy in this episode was that her mother never let her forget that she was possessed. That she was not human. She could not experience love, even the love between a mother and a daughter.
Yeah. And the mother was very cold to her, considering that you did this to protect your daughter.
So I've got thoughts, which I guess we'll get back to after you're finished.
With my long-ass summary.
Don't worry about it.
The listeners are used to it by now. So anyways, they build this bond, this friendship, and it turns into more than friendship. They start dating, and she gets into his camp by, I think, posing as one of those comfort women.
Well, I think the Korean translator that he was friends with, he was like, basically, you can only come in here as a comfort woman.
Right.
The people here are going to assume you're a comfort woman here for Tick. Otherwise, you're not welcome in here because they'll assume you're a communist spy. And she did not look comfortable with that.
No.
Also, like, what a bullshit. Either or, you know?
Right. There's no good way.
No. And I felt like the Korean American soldier felt for her, but was like, this is how it is.
Yeah.
Because he actually had a conversation with, was it her or Tick? I think it was with her.
It was with her.
Right? They were at the hospital. She was asking him, what's it like in America, whatever she wanted to go.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was like, it's just as bad as it is here.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, what are you talking about? And he was like, well, here I'm American, but there I'm Korean.
Yeah.
I don't fit in anywhere.
Man, that hit me straight in my soul. Because it's so true. Because I think I told you guys I am of Indian descent. And amongst Indian people that were born there and know their roots there, I'm not considered a real Indian. They have this whole saying for people of Indian descent that go back to India. They call them NRIs, non-resident Indians. And it's almost like, what's the word?
It's like a slur.
It's like a slur almost. And it's really disgusting. It's not everybody, but you know, there's a lot of people that are like that. Oh, you're not a real Indian. So that one really hit home with me because he's trying to find his place in the world. He couldn't find it either place.
Well, and it sounds like he maybe enlisted for the same reason, well, similar reasons as Tick.
Yeah.
Where Tick wasn't, I mean, he was a citizen, but he also wasn't a citizen in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah.
And so he enlisted, and that still wasn't good enough.
No.
Which, fucking, I mean, that's also still a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Real quick, one of my family members that enlisted never ticked what their religion was because he didn't want it on his dog tag that he was Jewish because he knew it would get him harassed in his unit. Y'all, I mean, he enlisted in the 2000s, the not. How is this man going to be enlisting to put his body on the front line and be too afraid to have something printed on a dog tag because then his unit becomes just as dangerous as the insurgents?
I know. I did that. I have surgery and they ask you for a religion. They asked me if I wanted to put one and I said no because it's just easier to not say that I'm Hindu. I literally was thinking about it. I was like, I'm going to talk about that today. And we're going to have a bigger conversation about this afterwards because I definitely want to. So we'll come back to this because I want to have a longer conversation about it. It was something that was so unconscious and I was like, did I do that? And I was like, I did that. Wow, Jennifer.
Well, and it's unconscious and it's not, at least in my experience, it's not unconscious out of shame. It's unconscious out of preservation.
And that's literally what it's, because without triangulating myself, the area that I live in, it's better for them to not know and to think that I'm assimilated into their culture. Back to the story. Tick and Gia develop an actual romantic relationship. It gets to the point of coitus, which I just wanted to use that word on the podcast.
Out of all the questionable language I use, and Jennifer's like, I'm gonna use some too. I'm gonna use coitus.
We're just such a pair.
Oh my god.
I don't know how you edit this.
I mean, I'm keeping that part in, but
Oh man. So yes, it reaches to the point of sex.
No, go back, use it.
Excuse me, coitus. So they're about to engage in the act, and Gia's trying very hard to keep her Kumiho in check, and she just can't. And poor Dick freaks out.
I mean,
I've seen guys leave, but man, I tailed it out of their surface. That was the funniest thing I ever saw. It was not meant to be funny. I just saw his butt jiggle. I lost it.
Wow, in such a tense scene, and that's what...
I'm telling you, I watched the horror in a completely different way. And I saw that, I just lost it. I just was laughing.
I felt real heartbroken for her because she was trying so hard.
She was trying really hard to keep it back. I mean, we all know that she really, truly loved him at that point.
Right.
He probably really, truly loved her, too.
Well, I think that he did, because otherwise he wouldn't have projected her as a commando and all of his fears. Because I think that the shock, and he didn't know about monsters yet.
Right, he
for
didn't.
sure.
Yeah. He'd only read about them at this point.
Right. And the shock, the betrayal, the unknown of it all. I think also he was a virgin. Because
yes.
she was not.
Yeah, because she was not.
And that was a weird...
It was his first time, right? Yeah.
They had the mini conversation about the awkwardness of it for him. And, I mean, no wonder he ran away. That is a heck of a way to have your first time. Well, also, and then there's the propaganda built into the soldiers of othering the people that you're occupying, vilifying them and all these things. And poor Gia was already vilified quite a bit by her own mother.
Yeah, she was so vilified. So he runs away, and one of the things that I forgot to mention is that when Gia takes these souls, she can actually see their whole life. She sees the past, the present, and the future. So when she's inhabiting Tick before he runs off, she sees that he's going to die. And so she's afraid for him, and that's why she's come back in episodes 1 through 5, and she's always warning him and calling him and stuff. And that's why he doesn't want to hear from her, because he's so afraid. And he runs away, and he doesn't really want to have anything to do with her. And that's pretty much episode 6.
I want to talk just a little bit about the victim blaming, really, that occurred in Gia's life. Her mother never outright told her it was her fault, but to sacrifice the victim to quell her own guilt and shame as a mother for allowing it to happen. And then she thought that allowing her child to become possessed by the Kumiho, from what I understood between their conversation with the shamaness that helped her become possessed, the Kumiho is not necessarily a benevolent spirit.
Right.
It's not really bad either, but it goes in, it does its job, but it has no concern of the humanity of it all.
Right, yeah.
Whereas I believe other nine-tailed spirits are not so ambivalent. And I felt like her mother very much told Gia as she grew that she was not human.
Yeah, she reiterated that a lot.
Yeah, she could not express love because she told her mom about Tick. She didn't want to take Tick's soul, and her mom was like, I don't understand what you're saying because you as a Kumiho can't have these emotions.
Yeah.
When it's Gia was not the Kumiho, she was possessed by it. And so there was this really weird vilification of her, which just was very odd, but it also kind of brought in all these questions of what makes you human, the issues of maternal protection and how far that sort of disordered love can go. And I also thought that it very much spoke to a lot of the issues of female power and sex in Asia, because even Gia, as what could be considered a more liberated woman in the sense that she freely has sex and, you know, pursues men and things like that, which was uncommon in any culture in that time, she still was not under her own power doing it. She had no control over her own sexuality. And I feel like part of her friend Youngjia, who was killed by Tick or his unit. Okay, side note, when he argued with her about just following orders, I was like, Tick, you know better.
Exactly. You know better.
Right. Out of everybody in that unit, you should have known better that just following orders is a horseshit excuse. And that pissed me off. But when they were arguing about it, Youngjia, she was sort of known in the nurses circle as being very pretty and very amiable and went on a lot of dates. And I mean, nobody in the nurse group slut shamed her or anything for like that, but she was very clearly well known as someone who was openly pursuing, and I think her and Youngjia kind of bonded over that in a way.
Yeah, because I think Youngjia was even like, I can help you be this way, you know, if you want to or whatever. Because I think she had ended up roping a doctor at one point, Youngjia. So yeah, and she
wasn't even interested in him, remember? Because Gia was like, how did you get him? And she was like, I'm not interested in him. He's just filling time. Like, it's just, he's so dumb and he's so easy to want to please me. Like, that's all this is. I really liked Youngjia. I wish that her character had been done better.
Me too. Because I thought at first that she was going to be the mean girl. And when she wasn't, I was like, oh, I'm I'm so glad, you know? And Gia comes off very, I don't want to say demure, but she comes off very sweet and quiet and docile almost. In the beginning, that's how I interpreted her.
Yeah.
So, you know, I almost thought, I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a mean girl situation with this really sweet woman. And it wasn't like that. It was very much empowering each other. It was so nice.
It really was.
Yeah.
Their friendship was very great, and you only got to see a glimpse of it, which was a shame.
Yeah, this show definitely kept the negative stuff rolling high.
Yeah.
But that was episode 6, and episode 7 was really, what do I say? It was sort of a shining light in a dark tunnel.
Yeah, if Strange Case and Ruby and Christina's relationship was my favorite episode, episode 7 was my second favorite episode for many reasons. But one of them was because of the beauty of the Black woman.
Yeah.
And the beauty of Afrofuturism and just the celebration of Blackness altogether. Episode 7 was sort of a love song to Black women, to Afrofuturism. And it reminded me that in one of my notes, and you'll give the background of this, but when Hippolyta is on the road, there is a song playing on her radio, and it's called, I'm gonna butcher this because I think it's French, and I don't speak French, y'all. Yeah. It took a lot for me to speak English well. It's called Piel Canela, which translates to Black Eyes and Cinnamon Skin. So it was a French love song at that time dedicated to a person of color. And I felt like that summed up that episode entirely. The entire episode was a love song to, if not Hippolyta, then to Black women in general, and their ability to be fierce, independent, beautifully autonomous human beings. Yeah. And so when she was on the road and this song was playing, there's a woman on a motorcycle that she kind of aligns with for a bit, and then the woman on the motorcycle bypasses her. That was Bessie Stringfield, and Bessie Stringfield was the first Black woman to ride a motorcycle across America.
Oh!
And she used part of the Green Book to do it.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Wow! What a really cool moment in history to highlight.
Right? And I feel like they're kind of like smiles to each other. Yeah. Because when they passed, the smiles were so beautiful and open, nodding to one woman on the road to another, out doing their own thing, having their own adventure, strong Black women. And it was so beautifully timed to that song that I fell in love with that moment. That moment is my favorite scene, actually, of that entire episode.
Oh my gosh. I gotta go back and watch it.
It was so perfect.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the other big historical moment of Hippolyta's journey is that at a point, she meets Josephine Baker and becomes one of her background dancers. And Josephine Baker was a phenom for a number of reasons. One, she was a Black woman who was out there performing in Europe, doing her thing, but she was also very, like, openly sexual Black woman. Yeah. In the show, they have her mostly with clothes on. Yeah. She performed a lot in full nudity with this very, I don't understand, but I mean, I guess people were into it back then. I don't know. I feel like it was very fetishized back then, which, I mean, yeah, sure, white culture does that all the time. But Josephine Baker is famous for performing in a banana skirt. Not like a banana leaf skirt, but like actual bananas. Okay. And actually, I don't know about how recently, but actress and activist Laverne Cox recreated that image in one of her own like promotional things. Yeah. And was asked to recreate Josephine Baker in that banana skirt, which she looked super cute in. Yeah. But I was like, the banana skirt is kind of weird to me. Yeah. But yeah, Josephine Baker was, and she was a spy. Right. Josephine Baker was very, she's amazing. She's very cool. Yeah. Very liberated, very in control of her own future. And she was so cool.
Yeah. Her conversations with Hippolyta were just, this was one of my favorite episodes too. Just for the nod to women, to Black women, it was definitely an appreciation episode for me. It was really good. I loved it. I really did. Like I said, it's the light through a dark tunnel. So, as you can tell, this episode is about Hippolyta. Hippolyta and Diana are looking for answers about George. I know that they go to Artem and they see the comic, and Diana is very upset that they're there.
When they see like the collapse of the house, and clearly more happened there than Tick and Montrose revealed. Yeah. Side note, I want to, now that we've revealed that Montrose is gay, and I don't think that this was intentional on Misha Green's part, because I don't believe she's from Houston, but the local gayborhood is Montrose in Houston.
Oh, yeah!
Right?
Why did I put those two together?
And so when you first find out Montrose's name, I was like, that's weird. That's the gayborhood. Yeah. And then you find out he's gay, and I was like, how strange.
I completely missed it. Wow.
So yeah. Huh. I found it strange that it felt like a nod to Houston. Yeah. The Houston gayborhood.
Like, I just kind of like that. Oh, it's like warm and fuzzy almost, right?
I know.
Oh.
It may not have been intentional at all, but it felt really neat to have that, like, correlation.
Yeah. So, yeah, Hippolyta uses the orrery. I think they return from Artem, and then she uses the orrery. She has to go to the observatory, and then a whole bunch of stuff happens. So, she uses the orrery. She realized she wasn't using it properly, and so she did her little calculations or whatever that I can't understand, obviously. Yeah, no. And she figures it out because, you know, I want to say she had made a discovery and someone else had taken it from her. And it was mentioned in the series.
The comet. Oh my god, what was the comet called? I had it written down in my other notes.
Yeah.
I had other notes to this, and Chainsaw sneezed all over them.
He hasn't even made an appearance today. He's probably too sick of my laughing.
He's probably sleeping. He was up a lot of last night just playing around. But yeah, I wrote it down in my other notes, and I rewrote my notes because he sneezed in a freaking huge loogie all over the notes. Y'all, it was so gross. So the thing about the comet was that when she was a little girl, she had to have a comet named, but they chose a white girl because they didn't want the representation to be a little black girl. That stuck with Hippolyta for the rest of her life, that like this moment of this comet and everything had been taken away from her.
Yeah. How rude.
Right? A young white girl was given the public recognition because public image or whatever was easier to swallow back then, which is disgusting.
And we're still battling that crap to today. That just blows my mind. We're in 2021, folks.
Okay, so Edison gets all the credit for the light bulb, but the person who invented the filament that actually makes it work was a black man.
Oh, yes! Yes, I found that out last year during Black History Month. And I was like, whatever.
Yeah, I found out
it's not a whatever, but it's I'm not going on the tangent.
I found out from Steven Universe. Pearl did the more you know. And I found out from Pearl. Oh, she goes on this little tirade about how they're teaching kids the wrong parts of history. It was very good.
Yeah. And true.
Anyway, we won't go into it. It was very good. Shout out to Steven Universe.
Yeah. So we find that out too. So, I mean, that just goes to tell you how, like I said in part 1, how limitless Hippolyta is when given the chance. So she figures out how to operate the orrery. She gets a key from it because there's a key hidden in it. And that leads her to this observatory where there's this huge machine. And of course, because she's the... Like, there's not even a great enough word to describe her. Like, I just look up to her so much. The icon that she is. She goes to this machine, she's trying to figure it out. And as she's working on it, the police come in, of course, because we're in the 1950s. They obviously assume all the negatives about her. And
and Tick followed her.
Yeah. And I can't remember if he makes his appearance before the police come or after.
I think he makes an appearance after the police come because I vaguely remember...
The tumble?
Yeah, because she was already under attack by them, and then he came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I wrote down there's a rumble in my notes. There's a rumble, and a cop is shot. And I was like, oh shit. I was fearful for these characters because I kept thinking of real life situations. Because as these episodes were releasing, it was it August, September, October? There was a lot happening in the world in that time. And so a lot of things with Black Lives Matter and cops, it was all at the forefront of my mind when that cop was shot, and I just was like, oh my gosh, this is like really triggering. At the same time, Hippolyta, the machine that she's working on, is activated and she gets sucked through a portal. Tick also gets thrown into the portal as well, but they don't arrive at the same destination. And this is where the magic happens. This is where Hippolyta, she transforms from wife and mother scientist to Hippolyta the icon, as I like to call her, because she was like an icon almost after she came out of it. I think she talks to her future self? No,
it's not her future self. She's just an ascended human of the future.
Yes, thank you. And she kind of asks her who she is. She asks Hippolyta, who are you? And I think Hippolyta's kind of torn almost, right? You know, she knows who she is, but does she really know who she is? And so that's where we get on this journey through different dimensions and time and space. And, you know, we meet Josephine Baker, like you said.
Anytime Hippolyta answers that question, she names herself.
Yeah.
And she becomes someone else.
Right.
Like a different facet of who she is or could be.
Oh, God. It was so well done. It was so well done. Like, I'm not going to do this episode justice in summary because I don't want to, because you have to watch it.
Yes. So the Josephine Baker part was really great. My favorite part was actually when she was part of I forgot how to pronounce it, but the African tribe of female warriors.
Oh, yes.
And she led the whole, that was so good.
Oh, man. I felt so empowered after that. And I did absolutely nothing with my time after that but dwell on that episode.
Oh, yeah.
It was a good episode. And like I said, I'm not going to do it justice. You have to watch it because as a woman, it inspired me. I feel it really inspired me. And in the end, you know, she travels through all these different dimensions and stuff. And in the end, she herself is transformed, Hippolyta, and she becomes the icon that we all know she was going to be.
Yeah. She reflected what her inner self was this whole time. And in a very cute nod, she winds up physically embodying the Arinthia character that her daughter Diana creates for comic books, with the shock of blue hair in space, very black girl magic traveling. And I mean, it truly was a love song to Black women. And I felt that song that they played during the Bessie Stringfield scene was giving us insight into what we were about to experience. And we never would have been ready.
No, I wasn't ready for this episode.
No.
Because every episode has been so stressful. And this one was not. I mean, there was a little bit of stress in the beginning, but it was just so, like you said, magical.
Yeah, it was absolutely a love story to Hippolyta, about Hippolyta. And I don't remember exactly when she said this during her journey and transformation, but she's going through the different facets of her identity. And she says, sort of in recognition of the person she allowed herself sort of to become in her marriage with George, and as a mother, and you know, she loved those parts of herself. She said she did, but she said that even after gaining freedoms and things like that in the Black community, that they still found a way to lynch me without a noose.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was so poetic of Hippolyta's journey into becoming who she was. And I felt like it played well after Gia's episode 2.
I think so too. I think the creators, when they did episode 6 and 7, granted the whole series focuses more on women, I feel, and we've already discussed women are the true heroes in this series. The way they did Ruby in episode 5, Gia in episode 6, and Hippolyta in episode 7, it just really is inspiring. And even, you know what, the way they did Letty too, with her episode with the Winthrop house. Like, I love the way they focus.
Well, and Diana in the next episode.
Yeah.
Every Black woman in this series was given a chance to evolve rapidly into the hero that was going to rescue Tick.
Yeah, right. All these women had to help this one little man. Some of the side notes of this episode is that we find out Letty's pregnant. Tick finds out the truth about his dad, so he learns that Montrose is gay. And he kind of takes it not really well, but I mean, I think he understands eventually.
Yeah, I feel like, and again, these were in my old notes that Chainsaw loogied all over, but I felt like he took his father being gay worse than he took some of the other things that were revealed to him around the same time.
And for me, that's so okay, great. What else? Like,
right. It made me wonder if it was trying to speak to, I, once again, don't have any context for this, but if you listen to Opinions While Black, Oz and Dee Randall speak to the hypocrisy of the Black community and their unwillingness to recognize the role that gay Black people play in their liberation. Specifically, let's talk about Black Lives Matter, organized and built on the backs of Black queer women and men. And it's completely and utterly pushed under the carpet.
It is. Unless you do your research into the origin of the group, you wouldn't know, because I didn't know.
I believe Patrisse Cullors, one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, is a queer woman of color. And she very recently got dragged too for something by her own community, and she was very hurt by it. And she openly said, you know, she felt betrayed by the community that she loves and that she's trying to constantly uplift. And I wonder if that was kind of the statement that was being made in that particular reaction from Tick, because he handled Shoggoths fairly well.
Better than I would have.
He handled all sorts of crazy stuff happening. Yeah. You know, almost being sacrificed in the second episode pretty well. But it's his father being gay that he felt slapped in the face for. I don't know. It was... Although, you know what? It makes sense, because this is 6 and 7 are definitely around the times we start to see some of the uglier facets of Tick's personality. Yeah.
There's an underlying theme of, is Montrose really Tick's dad in the whole series? Because we find out that George had an affair with Tick's mom. So you just don't know. But so So when Tick actually comes back through the machine, he was in, again, another space and time separate from Hippolyta. He comes back with the Lovecraft Country book. And that's fun.
Yes.
Because I like that they integrated the book, which I haven't read. I skimmed through. And there's some differences in the show, but I didn't read it to know what they were.
You know what I liked the most about them, kind of, because Tick, you only find out that he was also in a different time and space because he gives a one-statement summary of, oh, I was thrust into a crowd and someone with a robotic arm gave me this book and then I came back. And it completely and utterly kind of bypassed his own journey to give us an entire episode of Hippolyta and her growth.
Yeah.
And I was, all right.
And now that I think about it, that was probably Diana that gave him the book. Yeah. Wow. Oh, man. Okay, so now we're going on to episode 8, which is the dark episode.
Y'all, episode 8 is dark and truly the most frightening episode for lots of reasons. There are 2 instances that scared the absolute crap out of me.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it when we get into it, but we will talk first about the historical references that Diana's friend Bobo is actually Emmett Bobo Till. Bobo was Emmett Till's nickname. And for those who don't know, I guess, for whatever reason, I feel like that it should go without being need to be said, but Emmett Till was a young child who was brutally murdered by white men for the insinuation that he had catcalled a white woman. And later that was found out that it never happened. Whatever. The woman? Okay. So not only was he brutally murdered, but he was tortured, and his mom chose to have an open casket to allow people to see what had been done to her child without consequence. And I'm not going to go into everything that happened to him because I don't believe in torture porn or struggle porn. Just know that it was terrible to do to any human being, much less a child. And it was very upsetting. Yeah. So it starts off with the whole South Side attending Emmett Bobo Till's funeral. Yeah. And there's a lot of upsetting issues almost immediately. It's a hot Chicago summer day and Emmett Till is an open casket and they can smell Emmett Till from blocks away. And just the bravery for the mother to do that, but also the bravery for the community to go and stand witness to it. Yeah. I don't have the courage to do something like that. When my mom passed away, so we sit Shiva in Jewish tradition, which is sort of like watching over the body until it is time to be buried. And I sat Shiva, but I didn't go in and see her. Because when my mom passed away, she actually wasn't found for 2 days. Oh, wow. So my mom passed away 2 days after her birthday and on a Saturday night, and it wasn't until Monday morning that she was found. So about a day and a half. Yeah. And there was hurricanes in Houston during that time as well. So to be able to prepare for everything, and in Jewish tradition, we don't embalm the body. Everything needs to go back to the earth naturally. Okay. And so as I set Shiva, the funeral director was like, you're more than welcome to go and say goodbye to her, but it's going to be a very traumatic experience. Oh. And she said, she's right behind this glass. You can come to the glass and you can't see through and say goodbye to her while you sit Shiva. She's like, but keep in mind that this will be the last image you ever see of your mother. Oh my God. And I was like, okay, you can keep the door closed. Yeah. And so I didn't have the courage to go see and say goodbye to my mother. Yeah. Who, it was just heat stroke. So to think about this mother who put her child's body on display as a message and that the whole community came to stand and witness it. Y'all, that kind of courage.
She was thinking of a higher purpose. Yes. And in a moment when she was deserved all the selfishness.
Yes. In a moment when she shouldn't have had to think about anybody but herself and her son. She thought about her people, her community, and the future, and the injustice of it all. I wouldn't have had the courage.
I don't think I would have. It was a tough episode.
Right? And so that's just the opening, y'all. Minutes of that episode.
And I think we're both tearing up here, and I think it's because the fact that this happened in real life and it happened and we haven't learned from it. Right. It's just so... I don't understand. I just don't.
I would also like to say that I believe Misha Green did a justice to Emmett Till by having Christina reenact what had happened. Yeah. Because it's one thing to hear about it and to abstractly imagine what this child was put through, even after he passed. Yeah. What his body was put through. To see that played out on a white woman's body. And Christina went through the whole thing, even drowned. around.
Yeah.
And it was upsetting to see, but you're meant to see that in respect to Emmett Till.
Yeah.
And it was hard.
It was so hard. I had to pause this episode. This one, I think it took me about a week to watch, just because it was a tough one. It was a really tough one.
Well, and then it was scary.
We already were dealing with the emotional side of it, to then go into the horror side of it.
So the first thing that truly scared me was when Diana, who leaves the block viewing of her friend, is accosted by these police officers who believe, I think, that she either has pages from the Book of Names. They recognize her as being related to Tick and Hippolyta and everybody, because I believe Hippolyta is missing at this point. They've already realized she's missing. Yeah, they want to know
where she is.
And they've heard about the cop being shot and da-da-da. So they accost a child who's missing her mother. Yeah. That's all she knows, is that her mother is missing and her father's dead. Yeah. And now her friend has been...
And the adults don't want to tell her a lot about what happened to him either.
Right.
They're struggling openly during the funeral process to, what do they say to Diana?
Right. So she gets accosted by the head police officer, who we've seen many, many times at this point. Yeah. And
jerk.
The part that gets me is that when he places a curse on her, he spit on her forehead. That was almost as bone-chilling and skin-crawling as what came of the curse. And Diana, the actress who plays her, did such a phenomenal job to make you feel how violated she felt.
Yeah, the rage I felt for her. So
now we're getting into the other scary part. Which had a lot of layers. It wasn't just scary because the Topsy and Bopsy figments of Diana's imagination, which was the curse, they were also known as pickaninnies, which in the time of these characters, they were meant to be an outright mockery of Black children as unruly, wild, and unkept, which is why their hair was a mess, but had bows in it, in this very mockery of attempting to tame them. They had lipstick on in an attempt to civilize them. I don't know. The pickaninny is a very terrible racist imagery that is used against children. And we still do a disservice to Black children as it is, because statistically speaking, Black children are punished at a higher level than white children in school. Black children are often viewed as older than what they are and are treated so. So there's a lot of sexual abuse, and then of course young men are treated in punishment at a higher level than their age is, and there's a lot of issues there. And the pickaninny, Topsy and Bopsy, are the manifestations of that abuse and harassment, and they are following her. And they first come out of the shadows at the train station.
Oh my god, that was so scary.
And actually, Topsy was a character from Uncle Tom's Cabin, because in the show, Diana, after scrubbing at her forehead, having this disgust against what was just done to her, she's trying to cleanse herself again. You know what it reminds me of? Of the moment of a woman who has experienced a rape and she just goes immediately into the shower and scrubs until she's raw. Yeah. That violation of that attempt to reclaim your own skin.
That's what I was... Just so triggering.
Yes. And then she sees her copy of Uncle Tom's Cabin on the desk, and it morphs into this pickaninny. And then it turns out that the pickaninnies are what are haunting her. So Uncle Tom's Cabin is another layered subject, because it was initially written from a sentimental abolitionist's point of view. Beecher Stowe, Henrietta Beecher Stowe or Henriette Beecher Stowe? One of them. Whatever. It's fine. So she wrote it. She was an abolitionist, and she wrote it in the hopes of kind of promoting abolitionism and highlighting the humanity of Black people. It was very, in her time, I'm sure, it was very controversial and polarizing, but it's very tone deaf now. Yeah. Very tone deaf. In fact, it is so tone deaf these days that, once again, I'm not speaking from experience, but in the Black community, an Uncle Tom is a pejorative in the Black community. Yeah. It is someone who is a skin folk but not kinfolk, and a performer for the white man, you know, betraying their people. And so I felt like this episode was so layered, and I felt that Topsy and Bopsy, being the pickaninny of Uncle Tom's Cabin, haunting Diana, was very on point, because the idea of being haunted by that symbol of abuse and symbol of oppression, but also attempting to outrun it, to outgrow it, and be her own version of Black womanhood, and that her fear was to be caught by this stereotype. I mean, it was so terrifying for so many reasons.
Yeah. And the poor girl was alone throughout the whole thing.
No one else can see Topsy or Bopsy.
No. And it was just so heartbreaking. Well, you actually covered a lot of the summary. So I don't want to even go into it because I just feel so bad for Diana, but she's battling Topsy and Bopsy and running from them. And at one point, she's tired of running. And so she can't tell anyone with words what she's experiencing. So she draws, and she draws everything that she's experienced with Topsy and Bopsy. And then she grabs a bat and she's ready to just fight them off. And Montrose walks in and he just sees her with a bat just swinging, but he also sees the claw marks on her hands and stuff. And it's, oh my God, it's so
distressing.
It's so distressing, yeah. It was a really distressing episode.
You know, that made me think that Diana is alone in every aspect of her life at this moment. Her father's dead. Her mother's missing. Her friend is dead. Her community is not with her in this time of need. And she's completely and utterly alone fighting an oppressive image that only she can see.
Yeah, and no one can help her.
No.
Like we said, the adults are nowhere to be seen around her. The only time you see one is Montrose towards the end of the episode. It's just heartbreaking to watch Diana. But good things are ahead for her. So
yes,
that's the only thing that I can say about that. Elsewhere in the episode, Ruby seeks comfort from Christina. And she sort of kind of lets Christina have it almost, because Christina has no empathy towards what's happening right now. Ruby kind of, I think she was saying what we were all feeling. Like how can you not feel empathy for what they're experiencing? I think Letty gets scared by what happens with Emmett. And so she's seeking protection for herself and maybe her child.
Her unborn child,
So she meets with Christina, and, you know, a couple episodes back, they got those missing pages. And so they had taken pictures of the pages, and in exchange for protection, Letty gives Christina the negatives of those pages, and Christina gives Letty the Mark of Cain, which I have no clue what the historical stuff about that is.
Oh, that's Cain and Abel. So when Cain killed his brother Abel in the fields, it was the first murder, theoretically, the first murder, at least in the Bible, and it was brother against brother, blah, blah, blah. And God, to punish Cain, told him he would live forever, but he would live forever with the mark of the murderer. So wherever he went, people would know he had been the first one to murder, and that he would forever be hunted and reviled and da-da-da. The fact that Christina used the Mark of Cain to protect her was weird, and I don't know the significance of that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know that. Sorry, y'all. I'm gonna do.
No, you're fine.
I don't know about it. So now Tick also seeks out Christina for protection, but he wants help with his spell work. And he gives Christina the key to the orrery. Christina's just getting everything at this point.
Christina's getting everything she wanted, but piecemeal?
Yeah. Because he didn't give her the orrery. He just gave her the key that was from the orrery.
Right.
Not that she really needed the orrery anyways.
Yeah, once you get the key.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because she's getting everything she wants, but in her relationship with Ruby, she still promises Ruby, no matter what happens and no matter what comes of my own machinations and my own goals, I promise no harm will come to your sister.
Yeah.
I will not harm her. I will help protect her. And I feel like that was a very poignant moment in their relationship where if Christina was truly using everybody in her vicinity for her own ends, she owed Ruby nothing.
Yeah.
Especially since she was getting the things she wanted.
Exactly.
And she did it anyway.
Yeah.
But she also, after arguing with Ruby, paid these two guys to torture her in the way that Emmett Till was.
Yeah.
To experience his death. And I don't know if she gained empathy from it, but I feel like a part of her wanted to experience it so she could tell Ruby, I experienced it.
Yeah.
You know?
I really think that's what it was. Because when she came out of it, she was almost laughing. And I was like, well...
Well, and she checked her Mark of Cain.
Yeah.
Desperately checked it to make sure that it was still intact.
I was just like... Because I don't know if she was laughing in relief that she survived it, or... I don't know.
I got the feeling that she was laughing at what her privilege affords her.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That she was laughing at, for as oppressed as she feels in her privilege, she laughed at the irony that it was even through her oppression that she survived, and that a child was dead and she was not.
Yeah.
And I think that part of her wanted to experience that so she could go to Ruby and say, not necessarily that she did it for Ruby,
right,
but that that she wanted her to know that she on some level understood. I don't think she ever would have done that if she weren't with Ruby.
I don't think so either. You know, I wish that we had gotten a couple more episodes of Ruby and Christina, because I kind of feel like, I mean, we always said we wanted so much for Ruby and Christina. We just wanted them to work.
Right.
And I think this is just showing, we just want them to work.
Yeah.
They had potential.
I know. We saw a lot of what I would consider soft moments between Ruby and Christina that I wish we could have seen more of.
Yeah.
Because at some point, really, they were kind of cohabitating that house.
Yeah.
They were definitely engaging in coitus.
Yep. They had no secrets from each other either. Yeah.
I don't know. I really wanted them to be together.
Me too.
And I really feel like if it weren't for her one massively driving force in life to burn down the white patriarchy, her and Ruby could have worked out.
I think if she could have just altered her little plans a little bit to align with Tick and everybody else, that we could have had a happier ending. But that, I'm getting ahead of myself. What else happened in the episode? Tick and Montrose, they spell cast, and it's a protection spell. Oh, the end with the Shoggoth.
Right.
Yes. So towards the end, they're at Letty's house. Letty is being shot at. And Letty realizes that the Mark of Cain has worked. She is invincible to these bullet sprays. Tick comes along and he's trying to help her, and she's just like, I'm good. And he doesn't realize yet that she's got protection. She doesn't know that he has protection. He doesn't know that he has protection. And so in the very end, there's just an array of bullets that's just going everywhere. And this Shoggoth just shoots out of the earth. And man, he nails that sheriff.
Yeah.
And so that's when you realize that Tick's spell worked and he's got his protection. It was a cute little way to end an episode that was so dark. It was a really good episode.
Good framing.
But very emotional.
Yeah.
And then we head into episode 9 towards the end.
Yeah, episode 9. The historical references here are pretty obvious. Montrose alluded to it. They've discussed their family coming from Tulsa before. And for any Watchmen fans out there, the opening of the Tulsa Massacre in 1921, the obliteration of what was Black Wall Street. We are going to see the 1921 Tulsa Massacre play out in this episode. Pretty straightforward. No hidden literature references here.
Yeah.
Very cut and dry.
And again, another emotional episode. I just feel like we had that really great serotonin boosting episode 7 with Hippolyta, and then it was, well, you feel good now.
Right.
Here it comes. It's like a 1-2 punch every episode. So Dee is hurt by her fight. She's fighting for her life. Hippolyta returns, and they're trying to figure out how to help Diana. She's infected.
Which, actually, I read someone else said that her arm was withering away. When initially I thought it was like an infection. She was going to turn into a pickaninny. But the fact that her body was withering away was probably a much better image of herself withering away.
Yeah. And they use Hippolyta's blood to help prolong the withering.
They reset the curse from the very beginning.
They reset the curse, yeah.
I guess that was better.
Like, I guess that's all they could do in the moment. But they knew they needed the Book of Names to...
And Christina did that.
Yeah.
Christina came and helped reset the curse. Because she said that she herself could not break it, because it had to be the spellcaster to break it. Which, like, that guy.
I think he's dead at this point. No, he hadn't died yet. He hadn't died yet. He just got obliterated by a Shoggoth, though. So they need the Book of Names, and in order to get it, they have to go back in time, which is when they go back to 1921 and the Tulsa Massacre. And this brings up, I mean, obviously, so many emotions for Montrose. Not just what happened at that time, but his lover, I'm assuming. His very first lover when he, I think...
You know, I didn't think that they were lovers yet. They were pretty young.
I felt like this was a person who knew he was gay and accepted him.
Oh, definitely.
So
they
maybe
were
not
both,
lover.
Yeah, they were definitely both gay. They were probably like secretly dating or something.
Yeah.
Because they got caught holding hands.
Right, they got caught. Oh god, his dad was such a jerk.
Oh no, Montrose got caught wearing his mama's clothes.
Yes.
That's why his dad beat him. But later in the episode, him and his boyfriend are caught holding hands, which is why they get attacked.
His dad was such a...
He was also stupid drunk when he was doing it.
And it showed you this little cycle of this family that, you know, with Montrose's dad and then Montrose himself. And I think Montrose had a decision to make. This was all about Montrose making his final decision on... Because he'd always been torn this whole time on whether he should help Tick or just pull him away. And he was just... Poor Montrose.
Yeah. Well, and he'd been an abusive father because
Yeah.
Tick definitely lets you know in some episodes that Montrose beat him. It felt like Montrose thought Tick was possibly gay too because he read too much. I don't know, like he thought he was like soft or something.
Yeah,
that was stupid.
Right, he was trying to harden him up for some reason that I don't know why.
Trust me, y'all, there can be some hard AF gay people.
Yeah,
you ain't gotta be soft to be gay.
No, like some of the ideas, I don't know. I can't fathom some of these like stereotypes.
Right?
Just, whatever. I don't have the patience for it. So Montrose he sort of has to confront this multi-layered traumatic experience by going back. And so we get a lot of him dealing with it, going back to it, and then he wants to save his friend. Like they tell you cannot do anything to alter what's going to happen in the future. So don't do anything, just get the Book of Names and come back. And so Montrose is on his little journey. Tick is just kind of following his dad, just trying to make sure he's okay.
Well, and trying to make sure he doesn't change anything.
Yeah, because he sees where his dad is going.
Yeah, they definitely, because his dad left him and Letty.
Yeah.
When he saw himself getting beaten up by his own father, he left the safety of the neighbor's yard or wherever it was they were hiding. And Letty was like, I'll go do the mission. You go keep your dad in check.
Oh, man. And so... Poor Tick. I felt for him this episode because I've seen it where the kids have to take care of the parents and, that's always hard, even if you're both grown adults. And so Letty she's back at the old house and she's talking to the elders and she's trying to convince them to give her the Book of Names. And they get through into the massacre and everything as the night is coming to a close and before the violence starts. We didn't really get to see a lot of the violence. We saw some leading up to it.
Right. We saw a lot of harassment.
Yeah.
And we saw almost violence because Letty gets welcomed into Tick's family's home because a white man started harassing her and attacking her.
So you don't really get to see anything, which I kind of thought they were going to show us more, but I'm grateful that they didn't in a way because episode 8 was really hard.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful that they took pity on me.
Well, they did show quite a bit though when
they showed a lot.
Well, and when Letty, I know we'll get to it, but when Letty's walking back, Montrose is looking out over the city of Tulsa and you see just the havoc that is occurring to this one neighborhood.
Yeah.
Bombings, fires. It's an outright war.
Yeah.
Against this neighborhood that was just living its life.
Yeah. They were just doing their day-to-day thing. They didn't hurt an old body. It's just really insane. Just crazy. There's one moment that I want to talk about where Montrose is talking about, I think they're getting ready to get beat up on and someone saves them. And I can't remember the quote he said, I got you, kid, or something like that.
I got you, kid. And he said that the person came swinging the bat like Jackie Robinson.
Yeah. And so he was like, he's gonna come now. He's gonna come now. And Tick is in the background and he hears a story and his dad runs out to go say something. He's like, oh my God, that guy's not coming. Like my dad said the guy's not coming. So Tick, he sees the baseball bat, he grabs it, and he goes, and he is the guy, and he says, I got you, kid, and Montrose sees it. It was like a really just kind of sweet moment in an absolute dark.
It felt very healing.
Yeah.
Which was unfortunate in one way, because the healing moment came for adult Tick and Montrose, but it also saved young Montrose, but who would still go on to abuse his own son.
Yeah.
Which was unfortunate, but it was good that you got that healing moment.
For the adult ones, yeah. And Letty, like I said, she was talking to the elders, and at this point, I think the house has been set on fire. And because Letty has the protection spell, she is protected. And she manages to...
we got to talk about how heartbreaking it was that his family... They get into a conversation with Letty because she's wearing tennis shoes, right?
Yeah.
They're like, you're clearly not from here.
They immediately know.
And their family's already kind of passed on all the little secrets about this magic book. And so they buy her story that she's from the future without question. That also means that they make the choice to stay behind and die because it is also what has already happened.
Yeah.
That was really hard. I felt bad for Letty because she stood in that house and watched and witnessed them die to stand vigil over them, sort of. But like she
assured them that she was going to protect the future line.
Right.
And that was really heartbreaking too, because she didn't know these people from anyone. But in the short time that she spent with them, it was very clear there was a connection made. And just emotional. And very well done, again, because they conveyed this emotion of... They just conveyed strength.
Yes.
The strength, bravery, and the courage that they all had to willingly die, knowing that it's going to happen, it's already happened, but to see their future hopefully succeed, just I wouldn't have the courage to do that. And they get the Book of Names, and Tick and Letty jump through the portal back in time. Montrose is kind of lagging behind, but he eventually comes back.
He eventually comes through. And Hippolyta's been keeping the portal open this whole time.
Yeah.
Because she has these, like, weird futuristic plugs in her hands.
In her hands, yeah.
And so she's able to power the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Hippolyta was just like...
Just so cool. But that is where we end, and we go into the final episode of Lovecraft Country.
So I actually had to do research to gain some of the historical context here, because apparently it was a very Christian-centered historical context, which I never would have picked up on just by default of being Jewish. And this is kind of a spoiler, but we have a spoiler alert at the beginning of the show, so whatever. Tick, throughout this whole thing, you know, is sort of under the impression that he's going to have to be sacrificed for either Christina's goals or for the protection of his own people. So Tick is aligned as a Christ figure sacrificing himself for the future. I don't know. I mean, I guess, like...
Sorry.
I mean, I'll take everybody else's word on it. Yeah. Because the default of America is a white Christian America. Yeah. And I never would have seen it. So, you know, sure. If that's what they say happened, I guess that's what happened. Yeah. And it was intentional. The one I did pick up on, and it's not really even a historical like context, it was just an interesting nod to the illustrator, Afua Richardson, who Hippolyta says taught her how to draw at a time in the future. And she was going to teach Diana the skills. And Afua Richardson is the actual illustrator in real life for the prop comics. That Diana does. Yeah. And Afua Richardson is also an actual comics illustrator for, like, Black Panther and stuff. It was just kind of cool that there was, like, all these little nods and things like this to this really amazing Black creator, and that was the only one I picked up on. Yeah. The Christ figure was like, sure, whatever.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. So, a lot happens in this episode. A lot. They're trying to heal Diana because they have the Book of Names. While they're doing this, Tick and Letty faint. And they get transported back to talk with Hattie and Hannah. And this is where they learn about their birthmark and that it actually is a symbol of protection. So they have had protection this whole time. They sort of let it out that Tick has the ability to save everybody. So he kind of knows where his path is leading at this point. And this kind of strengthens their resolve to fight Christina. So Christina, so you love and you hate Christina because she takes back her protection from Letty. Yeah. And that really just burns me up. But I understand it because I also understand Christina in a way. Diana's arm cannot be saved, and she actually becomes the character she drew. She becomes Orinthia Blue, but she's also very upset with her mom at this point.
Yeah, which absolutely fair.
Very justified.
Yes. Having that conversation with I was a latchkey kid, but having that conversation with a parent who, in all honesty, did their damnedest. They made the best choices at the time, but you also get to a point as a child where you get to turn around and tell them, but you also failed me doing this, this, and this. Yes. And that's a very healthy conversation to have.
Yes. I will actually say my daughter told me that I spend too much time on my computer.
Really?
She told me my daughter is 6 years old, but she knows that she can talk to mom. And because of it, I realized I work full time. I go to school. So I am always on my computer. So I had made the resolution to take some time off of school so I can devote more to her because I realize I'm failing in that position. But I'm appreciative that she told me that because like, I would hate for her to grow up with resentment like that, you know?
Yeah. Well, and she felt that she trusted you enough to be able to say that, which, like, is reflective of Diana, too. Yeah. You know, you should be able to have that conversation.
Yeah. And listen, Diana is her mother's daughter because I was like, you tell your mother, girl. But I think Hippolyta was like, yes, I'm okay, I get you. So at this point, they're all getting ready for the big battle, and they're heading to Artem. And Letty makes one last dash of hope to get Ruby involved. And at first, Ruby's like, no.
Yeah, I'm not going to betray Christina.
Yeah.
I don't see the things that you see in her.
She's doing exactly what she wants to do, Ruby, which I don't fault her at all.
No.
Because I understand her. But as they're getting ready to leave, Ruby shows up. And I should have known.
Right?
But I didn't. And I'm mad at myself because I let it happen to me with Blind Manor.
Yeah, I was definitely heartbroken.
I was really heartbroken. And when I was reading up on it, everyone was like, you should have known when they were in the car and Ruby was singing
the
along.
song that she said she hated in the first episode. And I was like, well, I remember that scene, but a lot has happened in 10 episodes.
I mean, like I said it early on, each episode could be its own full-length feature film. So excuse me for missing out on that one line. I mean, I missed out on a lot of things. So it's just, I missed that. Completely missed it. But as you can tell, Ruby is not Ruby.
Right.
As they're preparing for the battle, everyone's doing a bunch of different things. And Letty and Ruby are going over the spell.
We forgot. Gia is here.
Oh yeah, Gia's joined the fray too. Why did I forget Gia? But yeah, she's in the car with them. Gia's there, Montrose is there, Ruby's there, Letty's there, Diana's, like they're all stuffed in this car.
Yeah, Gia knew that it was coming because she had seen his future.
Yeah.
And she knew that time was running out, so Gia came to help.
Yeah, and I think at one point her and Letty semi-acknowledge each other for their love of Tick. Yeah. Okay. And so they're in the car and they sing a song and it's kind of like a little happy moment before all the crap, but...
Except an insidiously happy moment, because apparently it was a clue.
Yeah, that we both missed. So they're at Ardham, and like I said, everyone is split apart doing different things, prepping for what's going to be this huge battle. And the main thing that I want to touch on is that Letty and Ruby, as they're practicing the spells that they're going to use against Christina, we find out that Ruby's actually dead.
Yeah.
Christina found out what the gang was doing, and she found out that Ruby was going to betray her, and so she killed her.
Yeah. Even though Ruby told Letty, I'm not helping you, I see something in Christina that you don't. Because Christina and her had sex as Christina and Ruby for the first time.
Yeah.
Which felt like such a big moment in their relationship, connecting on that level as themselves.
Yeah.
But something happened in that moment somewhere with Ruby where she decided, I need to choose my family over this relationship.
Yeah.
And so she attempted to get something from Christina that Letty asked her to get. And in that moment, Christina found her. And they don't show what happens, which I'm grateful for.
Me too. I wouldn't want to see that.
No.
I loved Ruby too much.
Yes. And I loved their relationship too much. But I think maybe, and this is probably just projection, but I think maybe Christina had been in the midst of a change internally.
I think so.
Because of Ruby. That to be so openly betrayed after that moment they shared snapped her. Yeah. Pushed her back over the edge into sacrifice everyone for myself. It's me, myself, and I alone against everybody else.
Yeah.
And only my goals and my ends matter. And I think she was taking Ruby on that journey with her until that moment and decided that it wasn't worth, I don't know. It was really heartbreaking.
I think it was just that she chose to be, while she wasn't as vulnerable as we would have liked, she chose to be vulnerable with Ruby to a certain extent, right? And
to have that backlash on her.
Yeah. After everything that she'd experienced, even though it's nothing compared to what the rest of the crew experienced, but for her in her life, for everything that she'd experienced with her family and William and everyone up until then, to put her trust into Ruby to a certain point.
Yeah.
And then to have that betrayal, even she never outright said it, but I think she was in love with Ruby, and I think it's
as much as she was able.
Yeah. And I think it was just a real cut to the soul.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think that she murdered Ruby maliciously to spite everyone. I think she murdered Ruby to, like, well, if that's the game we're playing, if we're back to sides against sides, I'm back on my own.
Yeah.
And it would have been you and I against the world, but now it's me against everyone else. And that was heartbreaking to see.
Yeah, it was really heartbreaking.
Except she put back the Mark of Cain on Letty. I think that was a nod to her still being in love with Ruby.
Yeah.
Even though she felt betrayed, because she upheld the promise of,
I'm gonna protect your sister.
Right. I don't know. It was just really heartbreaking to see that development in Christina.
Yeah. Okay, spoiler. She pushes Letty out the tower window.
Tower. When Letty figures out that she's not Ruby.
And so you're kind of like, well, okay, bitch. And then, like, Letty gets up and you realize she put the Mark of Cain back on her, and you're just like, oh, okay. There was that little slice of humanity still in her a little bit.
Not only that little slice of humanity in her, but she had to have known on some level that was a very risky move.
Yeah, I mean, you took it away for a reason.
Right.
Obviously. You killed Ruby for a reason.
Right. You made a choice and then you backpedaled just a little out of the sentimental notion of your relationship with Ruby.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we find out it cost her everything.
It cost her everything, yep. That leads us into the actual battle, which is not really a battle. Like, I keep saying they're prepping for battle, but...
It's more like a chess
Yeah, it's like a
move.
chess move. There's townsfolk there that apprehend the whole group, and it looks as if Christina's getting what she wants. They captured Tick. He is cut open, and there's blood everywhere, and Christina is bathing in his blood, and it is... I mean, this show wasn't really that gory, but...
Yeah, but this was definitely it.
This was it, yeah. They saved it for the end. Because when she's, like, bathing in the blood, I was like, ah. Like,
it reminded me of some vampire movie, but I couldn't remember what it was. I want to say Queen of the Damned, but that's not right. Is it?
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a scene that I remember Aaliyah being covered in blood.
I feel like it might be
like,
Queen of the Damned.
Right?
I think it might be Queen of the Damned, because when you said it, I was like, yes.
Right?
I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, we'll have to go back and rewatch, but I think so. And y'all let us know what it is if you know. Because, yeah, I think it was Queen of the Damned. I vaguely remember that scene, too. Okay. But it's just gross.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? It probably was. I mean, yes, imagery-wise, it looked very much like a scene from Queen of the Damned. I just realized it was probably a nod to what was she, a Duchess or a Baroness of Bathory?
Oh, yeah.
The woman who bathed in the blood of people to elongate her life. That's what she was doing to Tick.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a historical moment I missed until just now, but...
Yes.
Yes, it was the Duchess or whatever of Bathory that bathed in the blood of young women to prolong beauty and youth.
Yeah. Just just gross. It's so gross. So it's very clear that Tick is dying. He's losing a lot of blood, guys. And Letty wakes up around this time, and she is, like I said, she's a runner. She is hightailing it over there. She knows what she has to do. She's been practicing this spell, and she approaches the group, and I can't remember if they see her, and that's when the Shoggoth shows up. I think the Shoggoth shows up afterwards.
The Shoggoth shows up with Diana.
With Diana, because
Diana is like kind of shepherding the Shoggoth.
The Shoggoth. It was really scary at first, but it's very cute at the end. Letty saves the day. She binds Christina's magic and all white people in general.
She binds them and makes it to where they can no longer access magic if they had it, or access magic ever in the future.
Yeah, and I was like, what? Like, when I was like, what?
That was awesome.
It was a true, like, I hear it uses a lot of black girl magic, and it was a true black girl magic moment to me. And I was just like, girl, go ahead. And sadly, Tick does die.
Yes, Tick does die. It felt like they had already kind of come to terms with that they would try to save him if they could, but it was kind of understood that he was going to die.
And one of the sad moments is that Tick wrote a letter to his dad telling him that, you know, he knew what he had to do.
Because this whole time, they've told Montrose, that's fine, we got it figured out, it'll be fine. Tick will be alive at the end of this. We got it all figured out. And Montrose that's really the only reason why Montrose is going along with it and being as supportive as he is for the first time ever, is because he thinks his son is gonna live.
It's sort of poignant, you know, in the letter he tells him, I forgive you for a lot of things, and you have the second chance now to be the grandfather to my child and to correct some of the things that you didn't do with me. And I don't know, it was a little poignant moment for me, but that was it.
Yeah, I would really like to see a future where Gia is still with the family, that they've all just kind of bonded over this, that she is or is not still the Kumiho. Who knows?
Yeah, because we don't know if she ever took that 100th soul.
I feel like she found her humanity in refusing to take Tick, and that was all that mattered. She confronted her mother about having humanity and being able to experience love, and Gia was there to help save the day, and I would love to see a future with the little family that could raising Tick's child together.
I know, it would be really nice to see them all together raising Tick's child. I want to touch on some of the things that I snuck in the book. In the book, Tick is still alive. So I just read like the last couple pages and I was like, wait, he didn't die? What the hell? And I was like, I don't understand. And so I'm going to go back and read it because it just, I don't know. And also, William doesn't play a big role in the book like he did in the show. There is a William in the book, but I think he's just like a servant. So those are just some of the two takeaways that I saw when I was skimming the pages. I really liked this show.
Yeah.
It caused me to confront some things about myself. We were talking about it beforehand. I said, I'm going to bring it up. We didn't pay off the tease on colorism, so I want to touch on that first because I noticed a couple of parallels with Letty being a lighter skinned girl getting the opportunities to do more. And I can only speak for the Caribbean, Asian, Indian side of my culture, but you are sort of, I don't want to say you're more worthy, but you almost are more worthy, and you're viewed as beautiful if you're lighter skinned. And bleaching cream is real. I used it as a teen. I really didn't see anything wrong with it. It is so...
Well, you said it was not only marketed to you, but it was marketed in like the impulse buy of shopping centers.
Yes. So there is a show, like, listen, I already told you guys I like trashy reality TV, okay? I watch Love and Hip Hop. And so, listen, I watch them all. I take them all in. And there was a Jamaican artist. She brought to light that bleaching cream is very common in the Caribbean, which it is, because it's almost like if you go to a Walgreens, alongside the candy, there's the bleaching cream right there as an impulse buy. And like I said, I used it.
Damn, the message that sends to children next to candy.
Yeah. I mean, I had a friend who was very light-skinned and she still used it and she was so white. So it is almost ingrained in you early on that the lighter you are, the better your chances are in life almost. And I know that is something that's common in the Black community and celebrating like, oh, you know, that light-skinned guy is a lot cuter than the darker skin, which...
Untrue.
Very untrue. I mean, have you seen Idris Elba?
Oh, girls, don't even get me started. I have tripped down stairs when people have texted me pictures of him before. I'm not even kidding. It was so embarrassing.
So I wanted to address that real quick and say, like, that's definitely something that I grew up with. Like, even when I brought it up to my mom, she was like, oh, wow. And, you know, we just didn't think about it because it's so systemic for us. I also have this inner conflict that I dealt with a lot of uncomfortable feelings during this show and even talking about it. And so now I'm kind of confronting it because that's what we do in horror. And that's our whole point of this podcast. And
it's to sit with that uncomfortableness. Yeah. Because we were talking about that in pre-production. Yeah. That we think about some of these instances in these shows and we sit with them. And we sit with them because they're making us confront something we didn't realize we had inside of us.
Yeah. It's something I've come to a head. And so I'm going to lay it out for you. I deal almost daily with this inner conflict between addressing the Black community as Black versus African American. I don't know which one is the right term to use because I've grown up with both. And in an effort to not offend anyone, I use whichever one I think is right in the moment. And so when I say it, sometimes I say it kind of hesitantly, which I think I did a lot when we're talking.
The last episode you noticed it, and I only noticed it really once because you very clearly enunciated African American, but like in a few other instances used Black. Yeah. Well, and I gotta say it stood out starkly against me always saying Black.
Yeah. I just don't know which one to use because I think of it in terms of this. We say Black people, but we don't say brown people. Like, I'm considered, when you talk to me, oh, you're Indian, oh, you're Caribbean, oh, like, you're Trinidadian, you're Guyanese, like, Canadian. Like, it's always some sort of country associated with me. And I'm always so torn as to the right terminology to use because I don't want to offend anyone. And so I think that's just going to be a conflict I'm always going to have.
I mean, that's fair. I told you the reason I stick with the Black community phrasing is because that is what my Black friends use when directing conversation about themselves and their community, and I defer to them. Yeah. That being said, our director prefers African American. Right. And I did not know that until they were auditing the county podcast looking for African American phrasing, and I used Black. And I did not realize it was because our director preferred African American.
Yeah, because I mean, I get a lot of conflicting information.
I just want to say, by the way, is Black himself African American himself? I mean, I don't know. Yeah. He's also older than most of my Black friends.
Depending on who you talk to, I go by their preference. And the preferences are always changing, which for me, like, depending on how I feel that day, I'll tell you I'm Canadian or Indian or Caribbean. It just depends on how I feel. So I get it. I think it's one of the reasons why I was so uncomfortable. And so we kept putting off talking about this. And I was like, yes, thank you.
Wow, I don't struggle with that at all. The only thing I ask for is people not to call me a Jew. I am Jewish. Also, I'm Jewish. Like, we fled the Holocaust and we were Orthodox, and then in my generation we were Reformed. There was a lot of like very drastic, fast moving, let's assimilate as fast as possible so we'll get murdered. So I'm like Jewish.
Yeah.
I'm definitely the most Jewish of my family.
Right. And speaking of assimilating, I wanted to talk about that as well because I am an immigrant. My daughter is a first generation American. And granted, I immigrated from Canada. So like, I mean, like, there's not much weight to me saying an immigrant, right? Like what Canada's like America light. So my mother is an immigrant twice over. She immigrated to Canada and then immigrated to America. And same with my dad. And I've always been brought up to assimilate with the society that I'm around. So I talk this way because that's how people around me have talked. I think it's just nature to let go of my parents' accents. Growing up, I didn't listen to a lot of American culture. My first American person that I can remember listening to was Michael Jackson. And I'll love him till the day I die. I'm just gonna say that right now. Other stuff aside. But, you know, my first name is Jennifer. My mom gave it to us because she didn't want us to get bullied in school because she was. So I confronted a lot of these feelings with this show because I feel like I related to a lot of the characters because they were trying to assimilate to white culture just so that they can survive the day.
Well, in particular, George and Ruby.
Yeah.
George and Ruby both suffered at the hand of their attempts to assimilate.
Yeah.
George thought the Green Book protected him and didn't. Ruby thought her education would give her access and it didn't.
And I still feel uncomfortable with this series, but it's good to know that I've learned something out of it.
Yeah.
And that's all I can hope for when I watch a horror.
Right. I hope that we did the discussion justice because I was actually I edited the first part, episode 5, twice, all the way through, because the first time I edited it, it was still fairly long. And I was listening to it the second round through, and I was trying to listen to it more critically. And what I wound up cutting a lot out of was my own voice. Because when I get riled up, I revert to the person I was growing up. The person who was not painstakingly polished to fit into white Christian America, because I pass.
Right.
You know, I passed very easily. But I was not raised that way. We lived out of a car. We dumpster dived for years. I knew the best dumpsters in Houston on the southwest side. The one behind Belden's on Braeswood, that's where you go. But the version of me that is the relaxed version of me, my inherent natural self, it is not well put together. It is a fireball. And it is a fireball that is kind of, I use language euphemisms that are not inherently, I guess, white.
Yeah, you've got more flavor.
Right. People in the Black community speak often about being judged for speaking white. I also had to learn to speak white.
Yeah.
I grew up impoverished. I did not know a lot of things that you would think I would know about due to the access and privilege I would have naturally gained by my skin color.
Right.
So I wound up editing a lot of my own personality out of episode 5 because I thought out of context, and especially with the topics we were discussing, it could be seen and misinterpreted as offensive, mockery, appropriation of a culture.
Right.
But it's who I am and how I was raised and what I experienced in my life. And but I edited a lot of it out because I don't want people to misconstrue our message and my natural self, which is kind of shitty. I just realized like I edited out my natural self. I mean, you
did. You like now that we're talking about it, like, yeah, you did. You edited out Sadina, the person that I know.
Right. I edited a lot of it out, but that was my feelings were not the important part of the message of what we discussed here.
Yeah.
We were trying to do a service to a community we don't inhabit. And in order to do that properly, I felt that I had to remove parts of myself that could come off tone deaf. And while it sounds bad, I still did make that choice, and I stand by that choice because I think that as a voice that you can't see, but if you were to look up on our social media, I'm white, I am Jewish, and I don't fit the box people think I should. Yeah. Like you don't.
Right. I don't fit any box. I don't know. I mean, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
And I think because we're so early on in like episodes too, you know, y'all listening out there, you'll get to know us more. We try to stick to the topics at hand and not give too much of our personality.
Yeah, Caroline says that we sound so educated. I was like, girl, you just wait till you work with me longer in the department. I am not.
So I think as we move through...
I called a rooster a turkey.
Oh my god, I didn't think you were going to say it.
I just can't believe, like, y'all, I am not clever. I just hide it real well.
My head is filled with a lot of pulp culture and not a lot of intelligent words, so there's that.
Yeah, we have notes for a reason.
Yeah, we do. Like, I have to write it down for a reason. Even if my notes are so, like, dorky. You'll get to know us, and we just wanted to make sure that we paid respect and do it in a way that you knew that we were being respectful.
Yes. And with that, I think that's a wrap on episode 6, part 2 of our first two-parter. Well, we hope that you guys will join us for episode 7, which we're kind of taking the theme of the old gods and running with it into the next episode.
I can't wait.
Where we're going to discuss 2 movies. I don't want to give them away yet because I think that while they are very different, they have a lot of overlap and they are going to be very fun to discuss.
When we talked about doing a podcast, I had one of these movies in mind. So I'm just so excited.
All right, well, we'll see you guys again. Bye.
Bye.
If you liked listening to us ramble on about horror, subscribe to our podcast and tell your friends. And if you would like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook at LLOTL Podcast.
Check out our website by going to lastlibraryonTheLeft.com. Be sure to visit our About Us page to discover our 2 truths and a lie. Or, if you'd like to send us an email, you can reach us at somethingwicked@lastlibraryonTheLeft.com.